Begin transmission.
On the night everything went wrong, I was standing in my kitchen, drinking a beer, and watching my daughter Lacey text her friends with that glassy-eyed indifference that only teenagers can manage. It was just another ordinary Thursday. No apocalyptic omens, no strange weather, no eerie silence before the storm. Just the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional ping of Lacey's phone. Then, my phone vibrated on the counter. Emergency alert. This is not a drill. At first, I didn't react. Test messages happened all the time. But this was different. No details, just that simple, ominous message. I turned on the TV, trying to flip through the channels. But all I was met with was a grainy image with those 7 ominous words in black and white. It was like something from an old nuclear test warning. I felt an unease creep in, something cold and thin, like a draft under a locked door. "Lacey," I said, my voice calm but firm. "Look at this. Check your phone. Did you get an alert?" She didn't answer at first, just swiped at her screen, then frowned. "Yeah," she said. "It's probably just a test, right?" This is not a drill. Something about that wording kept my stomach tight. I checked my neighbour's house through the window, old man Grady's place. His lights were on, nothing seemed off. If something really bad was happening, wouldn't people be outside? Wouldn't there be sirens? Then, from outside, I heard it. A noise. Low and drawn out, almost like a distant horn, but wrong. It wasn't mechanical. It was organic, wet, like something breathing through split vocal cords. Lacey perked up, her face losing some of that teenage bravado. "What the hell was that?" I walked towards the front door, my skin crawling. "Don't open it." That was my first instinct. Every animal instinct in my body screamed it. But then I thought of Grady, of the Petersons across the street. If something was happening, we needed to know. I pulled the door open a crack and looked outside. Nothing. The street was still, washed in orange lamplight. But the silence, it wasn't normal. It was expectant, like the whole world was holding its breath. I stepped out onto the porch. That's when I saw them. At first, they looked like shadows. Tall, thin, just shapes against the street lights. But when I blinked, they were closer. Too close. The shapes didn't move the way people do. They jittered, stuttered, like a bad signal on an old TV. And then, for the first time, I saw their faces. They didn't have any. Or maybe they had too many. Mouths, eyes, shifting and bleeding into each other, like reflections on broken glass. My throat closed. I stumbled back inside and slammed the door, making sure it was locked twice, 3 times. Lacey's voice was a distant buzz in my ears. "Dad, what's wrong?" I turned, feeling my breath come in short, sharp bursts. "We keep the doors locked," We keep the lights off, and we don't open the door. And then, as if to test my resolve, my phone buzzed again. Emergency alert. Do not look at them. Do not let them in. Do not answer the door. And from the other side of the front door, something knocked. Once, then twice. And then, in a perfect, whispering mimic of my own voice, it said, "Lacey, honey, open the door for me." The voice on the other side of the door was mine. Not a poor imitation, not some garbled, robotic playback. It was perfect. The same way I called her name in the mornings before school. The same casual softness I used when checking if she was okay. Lacey froze. The glow from her phone screen made her face look almost ghostly. I held up a hand. Do not move. Do not speak. The knocking came again, a little harder this time. "Lacey, sweetie, it's just Daddy. Open the door, okay?" A thin, slithering sound followed. Something wet dragging across the wood, like fingers coated in tar. Lacey's lips parted, and for a second, I saw a flicker of confusion in her eyes, the slightest hesitation. She wanted to believe it was me. I grabbed her arm, hard. She gasped. "Dad, what?" I pressed a finger to my lips. Silence. The thing outside shifted. I didn't hear footsteps, just the sound of something adjusting, like the bones of a broken marionette being snapped into place. It wasn't alone. A whispering chorus began, faint but growing. "Let us in. We're cold. We're hungry." Then the voice changed. It became something new. A woman's voice, small and sad. "David, please, let me in." My stomach clenched so violently, I thought I might vomit. I knew that voice. I knew it. Lauren. Lacey's mother. My wife. Dead 5 years now. I felt her name push against my teeth, almost slipping out. Almost making the mistake of acknowledging it. My mind was spinning. My lungs felt tight. I looked at Lacey. She was watching me, waiting. She didn't remember her mother's voice. She'd been too young when we lost her. But I did. I forced myself to breathe. Deep, slow. Think, David, think. Another emergency alert buzzed on my phone. I nearly dropped it. Do not speak to them. Do not acknowledge them. Do not let them in. I swallowed hard. I turned, gesturing for Lacey to follow me. We moved down the hallway in careful, slow steps. No sudden movements. No noise. The voices outside didn't follow. But something else did. A shadow moved along the far end of the hallway. It wasn't coming from outside. It was inside the house. I stopped so fast, Lacey bumped into my back. To begin with, I thought it was a trick of the light. But the longer I stared, the more I saw it. The shape was stretching, warping, flickering in and out like a bad signal. I took a step back. The thing twitched. Not a human movement. Something different. Something wrong. Then it turned its head. Or maybe it didn't have a head at all. Maybe it just made me think it did. Its form rippled, changing, imitating. It stepped forward, becoming me. Not a bad copy, not a distorted shadow. It was perfect. My height, my face, my eyes. Lacey gasped. I turned and grabbed her wrist, yanking her forward towards the basement door. I threw it open and shoved her inside. "Dad, what?" "Don't question me," I hissed, slamming the door behind us. The basement was dark. I fumbled for the flashlight on the shelf, my breath coming fast and ragged. Upstairs, something moved. A lot of somethings. Not footsteps, not breathing, just movement. Like bodies shifting inside of bodies. Like something rearranging itself over and over to get the shape just right. Lacey's breathing was fast, panicked. "Dad, what is this? What's happening?" I didn't have an answer. All I knew was that the world was wrong now. Everything normal had snapped. Another emergency alert buzzed on my phone. Do not trust them. Do not let them touch you. And below that, a new line. They have learned to mimic. My stomach turned to ice. Lacey was staring at me, eyes wide and wet. "Dad?" I reached out, touched her shoulder. "Baby, I promise you, I will get us out of this," I whispered. The moment my fingers brushed her skin, she shuddered. She flinched, like I'd hurt her. A slow, creeping horror crawled up my spine. "Lacey," I said carefully, "you know I'm your father, right?" She was trembling now. Her mouth opened, and then she whispered, "Are you?" I felt the blood drain from my face. The mimic upstairs, it had taken my form. How could she be sure I was me? A sharp bang rattled the basement door. Lacey sucked in a breath. Another bang. Then, the door handle turned. We'd locked it. I had locked it. And yet, something was turning it. The wood creaked. Lacey grabbed my arm, her whole body rigid with terror. The door swung open. The basement lights flickered on. A shadow stretched down the stairs, long and thin. And then, in my exact voice, something at the top of the steps said, "It's okay now. Come upstairs." My voice. Perfectly my voice. The thing standing at the top of the basement stairs cast a long shadow, distorted by the single, flickering light bulb. I couldn't see its face, not yet, but I knew that if I did, it would be mine. Lacey's grip on my arm tightened. Her breathing was quick, sharp, her whole body trembling. She didn't know which one of us to trust anymore. And honestly, neither did I. My mind spun. How do you prove you're you? The thing at the top of the stairs tilted its head. I could hear its bones pop, like they were reforming. "Lacey, sweetie, come here." My stomach lurched. It had the tone right. The softness, the familiarity. The way I said her name when she was scared. Lacey twitched. Her body wanted to believe it. She turned to me, uncertain. I don't know," she whispered. "Dad, I don't know." I grabbed her by the shoulders, hard. "Look at me," I whispered, my voice barely holding steady. "I don't care what happens. I don't care what you hear. You do not go up there. Do you understand?" Her chin wobbled. A long pause. Then she gave the smallest nod. Good girl. Upstairs, the thing sighed, like it was annoyed. Then it took a single step down. The light flickered again, and when it came back on, the figure was closer. I didn't see it move. It just was. A lurching, reality-skipping wrongness. I pulled Lacey back with me, deeper into the basement. My mind was a storm. We couldn't stay down here forever. The back door led to the yard, but if these things were everywhere, then we had no idea what waited for us out there. Another step. Then another. Each time the light flickered, it was closer. Now I could see it. It was me, but not. My eyes were wrong. The irises too large, the pupils slitted like a cat's. My mouth, Jesus, the corners were too long, stretching in an almost polite smile. I did something I hadn't done since I was a kid. I prayed. The thing took another step, and then another emergency alert came through. The thing froze. Its entire form glitched, like a bad transmission. I pulled my phone out from my pocket, almost dropping it in my shaking hands. The screen was blacked out. Only one line of text appeared, repeating, flashing over and over again. They can hear you. They can hear you. They can hear you. And below it, something new. They can be hurt. I almost choked. The thing shifted. It had read the message too. It knew I knew. Lacey gasped again. Dad, the lights. The bulb blew out. The basement was swallowed in darkness. And then a whispering chorus filled the room. More voices. More imitations. They were inside the house. I yanked Lacey behind me and fumbled through the shelves. A weapon. I needed a weapon. My fingers brushed something heavy. The old metal flashlight. The whispers grew louder. Then Lacey screamed. I whirled around, just as something lunged towards us in the dark. I swung the flashlight hard. A wet, crunching impact. The thing let out a horrible, gurgling sound. Not pain, not exactly, but surprise. I swung again, and again, and again. My arms burned, my mind screamed, and then silence. I was panting, sweating. My pulse hammered against my skull. The flashlight beam cut through the dust swirling in the air. The thing lay crumpled on the concrete. Its skin, my skin, was split open. But inside, Jesus, there were no bones. Just a shifting, writhing mass of black sinew. Too many mouths. Too many eyes. Its head twitched. The eyes locked onto me. It was rebuilding. I grabbed Lacey and ran. We crashed through the basement door, sprinting through the house. I barely registered the shifting shadows, the murmuring voices, the wrong shapes moving behind the curtains. I yanked open the back door. We burst into the night. But the sky was wrong. The stars were moving. The air hummed. The neighborhood was gone. Or maybe changed. The street was too long, stretching into an impossible horizon. Houses twisted at the wrong angles. Windows blinked like eyes. And in the distance, they were waiting. Hundreds, thousands. A shifting, undulating sea of mimics. They stood in rows, watching. They'd never meant to stay hidden. They'd been studying us. Lacey gripped my hand, shaking. "Dad?" I swallowed the acid in my throat. I turned back to the house. Someone stood in the doorway. It was me. The real me. Same face, same eyes. And it smiled. A perfect, understanding, human smile. "It's okay now," it said. "We don't need to hide anymore." As the mimic smiled, the weight of its words settled deep in my chest. A finality I didn't want to understand. Lacey's grip tightened around my hand. "Dad?" Her voice was barely a whisper. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because I wasn't sure of anything anymore. Not of the world. Not of myself. Not of the things standing in the doorway, wearing my face. The mimics had been studying us, learning, adapting. Now they weren't just imitating. They were replacing. I took a slow step back, pulling Lacey with me. The air vibrated with something unseen, something beyond human understanding. The other me didn't move. It only watched. Then, in perfect synchrony, every mimic standing in the street, hundreds, thousands, tilted their heads, smiling, welcoming. The truth was clear now. We weren't being invaded. We were being erased. I looked down at Lacey, at the fear in her eyes. No matter what happened, I had to protect her. I had to at least try. Even if I wasn't sure, I was still me. So we did the only thing we could. We ran.
Ends transmission.